Hey guys, I'm Olivia Gullion. I chose to read The Countdown to Pearl Harbor, The 12 Days to the Attack by Steve Twomey. It was published in November of 2016. I actually read the audiobook, and so since my audiobook is on my phone and I'm videoing on my phone, I'm going to have to improvise, and I'm going to show you the cover on my computer. So throughout this book, Steve Twomey explains and discusses the events and decisions that were made leading up to the attack of Pearl Harbor. And most of them weren't very good decisions. So the Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7th, 1941 in Hawaii. This is when the Japanese attacked the U.S. So now let's talk about the events leading up to the attack of Pearl Harbor. One of the first events that happened was at the end of November in 1941. The Navy in Hawaii actually got a warning about the Japanese and about the possible attacking, but they did not take it seriously, and they just ignored it, really, and didn't really go through the precautions like they needed to. But throughout this and the events, there were many false assumptions, misunderstandings, and clashes between the Japanese and Americans. I feel like they probably should have put their pride aside, but they just couldn't look past the conflict and the disagreements. The purpose that Steve Twomey had behind the Countdown to Pearl Harbor is to show the reckless decisions that the U.S. and Japanese made leading up to the attack of Pearl Harbor. What if those decisions were made differently or didn't happen? Would Pearl Harbor attack even happen? I do recommend this book, but it had some slow parts to it. It was not as good as my first book review, but that's okay. Of course, I knew what Pearl Harbor was and a few things about it, but I never really looked into the depth of it and tried to understand the events leading up to the Pearl Harbor attack. But while reading this, I really was able to grasp and understand that because the author was so good at placing the reader into the character's shoes, whether that's Japanese or the American characters. I really could understand what they were thinking and feeling, and I just understood what was happening. And I also had the ability to picture each character in the book because Steve Twomey was so good at describing the characters. So for my lesson, I chose 5th grade, and it's going to be about the events that led up to the attack of Pearl Harbor. So my students will analyze the decisions that were made leading up to the attack. The first thing we're going to do, I might read this entire book depending on my time, or I'm going to just pick pieces of this book and share them with my 5th grade students. Then we're going to also watch a few videos. And throughout this time, I really encourage my students, and I'll highly recommend them to write notes down and anything that really sticks out to them, because we're going to have a few activities that they're going to need to use that for. So after the reading and the videos, we're going to discuss our thoughts. And then when I feel like my students have a really strong understanding of the decisions and the effects of the attack, then we will start the activities. So the first activity we will do, we are going to complete a graphic organizer. But let me just stop right there. Throughout this whole entire lesson, I really want my students to put themselves in the shoes of those who were in the Pearl Harbor attack, involved in the Pearl Harbor attack. But let me go back. So they're going to complete a graphic organizer comparing and contrasting the decisions of the U.S. made leading up to the attack. One side will be positive, and one side will be negative. In the middle will be just the median that they're not really sure about. But after doing that they're allowed to use their notes during this and have a partner during this time. Then I'm going to have my students write 2 paragraphs and explain what they would have done differently to not cause the attack of Pearl Harbor. This will really let me see if they really put themselves in the character's shoes and what they would do differently, because I feel like the main purpose of this book was to show and explain what both sides could have done differently and made better decisions. So yes, I have read the entire book cover to cover and every word on every page. Thank you.